We'll start with Hivin for probably 6-7 minutes about her work, and then Reem, and then Muhammad. And then I'll ask each a question before we open it up for your questions at the end. Hivin, please.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Ibrahim, for the introduction. As Ibrahim said, my name is Hivin Kako. I'm the Executive Director of BIHAR Relief Organisation. It's a grassroots organization founded from the heart of Aleppo city with the start of the revolution. The initiative started by a group of doctors. Those group of doctors were trying to help the injured people in other cities. Then when the head of the board was abducted, they have to leave the country for their life. And as you know, the humanitarian crisis keep on increasing and the number of people in need rise on daily basis. The members have decided to officially turn it to an organization from an initiative around December 2012. Since then, we have been working in different provinces at the north of Syria, and we currently serve mainly in 2 provinces, Aleppo and City, where we have 6 offices, and next month we will start operating in the 3rd province, where we're gonna start providing health services. BIHAR work in different clusters in the humanitarian work according to the UN OCHA. We work in the health cluster, the food security, the protection, and the wash, and the camp management, and the shelter. And today I want to focus on the size of the humanitarian crisis from the protection perspective. As we watch on every day, the protection is becoming a major issue inside Syria with escalation of violence, especially the shelling of the civilians across the country. Yesterday, 2 hospitals were out of the services in Aleppo city. The day before, 2 were in Idlib city. So as we see, the shelling continue and there are too many actors involved. But I will leave that later for Dr. Muhammad to talk about the health and the attack on hospital. I will talk about protection and challenges we face on every day. The civilians have no right to live. That's why they have been attacked on a daily basis across the country. On the top of it, we're noticing that the protection is being sometimes isolated and is not integrated in the program within the humanitarian work, and that's becoming a risk, and it's narrowed in a way, because the first line of protection, which is stopping the shelling, we cannot afford it, so there is no real umbrella for protection. If you allow me to share with you, in 2013, when I arrived to Gaziantep, and early in March 2014, I came back home one day to find a young girl, 14-year-old, is sitting on my couch with a friend. She was sent back from Egypt. She was a victim of child labor. The person who took her to Damascus decided to send her back to Syria. And I don't know who's that girl. All I knew that she's a vulnerable, unaccompanied minor sent to a lawyer to be just shipped as any piece of items to Syria, to the unknown future of within this vicious cycle of violence. I look at her and I saw a quiet teenager. She's vulnerable. She's pretty. How can she go to the unknown future inside Syria? I tried to contact different entities inside Turkey to try to find a shelter, accommodation for her. Unfortunately, there was no option. The only option was one tent in one camp inside Turkey. The tent that has 12 beds half of them for boys, half of them for girls. And you hear every day about early marriage, sexual abuse. And I looked at her and I felt like, how am I going to let her go? It's not possible. And then how she can go to Syria, where she's going to go. The father who gave her to be a servant at the age of 9. And the person who's going to take her back, he didn't know even that the father, where is he, you know? So for me, I just felt like, morally, what shall we do? Eventually, I decided to take her in, and I was fostering for her for a year while I carry on putting her case for resettlement. Unfortunately, I am Syrian, but I'm also British. The British government refused her case. So she was not vulnerable enough. And that was so much irritating. How vulnerable the person can be to be unaccompanied 14-year girl. Shall we just leave her to the street of Gaziantep so to fall in the trap of any type of abuse? Luckily, the United States took her back. I have to reopen her case after the UK refused her, and the state have took her, and since 2015, she's here. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because we are too worried in the United States about what will happen to the immigrant, what's the case here. But at least for me, I felt like it was an achievement to have to protect one vulnerable person inside Syria. We cannot do a lot of protection. We cannot offer an umbrella for all the vulnerable, but that one case is important for us because being Syrian and living in the conflict on everyday basis, these are not numbers for us. All the big entities have stopped counting the deaths. I think the last figures being counting the real deaths stopped since 2013. I think maybe when one day the crisis finishes, we will find how many people have died when we go and try to find how many massacres have occurred, how many dead bodies we'll see when we document. The numbers were too high for UN OCHA to carry counting and the number of the deaths. So it's left for us as civilians, try to do what we can as civil society. So this is one story, one person, and this is a case that we face it everywhere. The example is from Turkey where we are based, but there are other examples. There are other vulnerable people. Leave alone that I am the gender focal point, and we face a lot of challenges. Challenges that we don't find enough voices of women who are doing the work. And the donors are not doing enough for accountability, for empowering women, to include them, to have their perspective. Although we know that the majority of the people on the front line of fighting are men, and actually the figure says that if you are at the front line, you are safer than being at home. So we are losing lives while people are at their home, on the street, the kids are playing, and the figures are out there. We don't want to share figures. I want to share one more story from Aleppo City for you. Last week, when I was visiting the UK, I talked to my team in Aleppo City, and I said, what do you want me to tell people in the UK? What is the most touching situation now in the areas after this harsh besiegement? He said, tell them that we've created a new dish. For those people who know Aleppo, it's the heart of the food in Syria. They're very proud of their food, and they love what is called kebab. So they are not vegetarian, although now they're looking for vegetables because there are no vegetables in the city. They are under real harsh besiegement over 3 months now, and it's suffocating. Before that, there was a small window, so it's been almost 6 months the besiegement is carrying on, and nobody can do anything. That new dish of kebab, it didn't have meat. It was created from burger and lentils. And he said, we are doing it, we're mixing the burger and lentils, and we are putting it on fire as a barbecue, and we eat it. And we try to imagine it is the substitute of kebab, that we no longer can afford it or have it. So this is where we are. We find ourselves stuck, that we cannot help those people who are in need anymore. Thank you.
Hivin, you mentioned that it's safer for some civilians to be in the front lines rather than in the cities. Would you explain to us why it's like that inside Syria?
I mean, all the figures now shows that when you are at the fighting front, there is little is happening there. The majority of shellings is happening for hospital, for school, randomly for the houses. So that's why people are losing their life by just being at home, because they will just find their house has been hit. Schools, where the children dies on a daily basis. Hospital, so that's why it is documented that now the percentage of deaths of the people who are fighting is less than the civilians.
Thank you very much.